The new mastery system offers a lot of opportunities to do more damage, get more tanky, or just get more utility. But there's so many options, and especially as a new player it can be really overwhelming. And even though I've switched to Invocator in tier 2, I have so much experience as a tank in tier 1 that for me it's pretty obvious what you should take and what you should avoid. So we will start with that, and at the end I will also give you an updated skill layout and explain you what are the best rotations. Okay, so let's start with the masteries. So both the S and also the Greatsword have mostly useless masteries for PvE. The tankiness they get is mostly good for PvP, and the offensive stats are mostly good for AoE farming, which can be good for killing trash, but that's also it. But still, this is the mastery I would go for the first 90 points of the SNS. And as you can see, we are going to focus on the offensive quadrant. Not because we don't want to take tanky stats, but we want to take stats that are beneficial for us in PvE. We could get in the tree a lot of stuff like CC resistance and stuff like this, but this is completely useless for us in PvE. But let me just explain what the passives do and why we take them. So the raw amplifier gives us a little more AoE damage for trash mobs. So as you can see, with every hit we are doing, we are dealing now a little AoE damage around us. Before you had to use provoking raw to apply a debuff on your enemy, which then let your enemies explode all the time. Now you have that effect just constant, but it deals a little less damage. But it gives us still more uptime on trash mobs, which is of course still really good. But the next node in the tree is actually really strong. Now every time we use Shield Strike, we increase the damage of our next ability. Shield Strike is an ability that we can spam non-stop. Especially if you have some deadly markers in your party, you will have no cooldown on this ability. And every time you use it, your next ability will just deal more damage, which will of course heavily increase your damage. Okay, now Devoted Strike and Blade Momentum give you more damage to your SNS skills, either when you collision someone or if you use certain abilities. That sounds really good, right? But the problem is that most of our damage comes from our Greatsword skills. There are not so many good SNS PvE damage skills. I would still take it because there's nothing better to take, but if you want to skip both of these, that's totally fine. You could, for example, go for smaller passives that just increase your stats. Okay, but these are actually the only useful passives for the SNS. The only thing that might be good, which I have not yet been able to test, is the Tactical Breaker. Here you can lower your opponent's armor when you hit a collision. Reducing the defense of your enemy is always insane because it increases the damage of your whole party. But the problem is that you can't push or pull bosses, at least bosses in dungeons. So I'm not sure if this will work, but if it does, you for sure want to take the Tactical Breaker here. Now we come to the Greatsword, and as you can see, we also go full damage. And again, it's not because we don't want to take defensive stats, it's because there are almost no useful defensive passives that we can use in PvE. Okay, so first of all, we go here for Force of Capacity. This can become useful, but only if we are in the late game. The next one is Reckless Assault, which is also nothing special. So our passive Raging Frenzy increases our damage when 3 or more enemies are around us. And now with Reckless Assault we are increasing here the value of the mastery. It's okay for trash mobs, but again there is just nothing better to take. Then Fast Strike is an awesome passive that increases our AoE for Devastating Smash, Frost Cleaving and Ice Tornado. So it's of course really good for PvP, for open world farming and again for killing trash mobs in dungeons. Again, for sure not 100% necessary. But again, there's nothing better that we can take. But the last passive of the Greatsword is really good. It gives you extra crit damage when you are above 50% HP. And you will be above 50% HP most of the time. So increasing your crit damage all the time is of course really insane for us and will really heavily boost our damage. It's a little bit sad that the SNS and Greatsword has almost no good passives here for PvE. But yeah, this is what I would go for here. Okay, let's have a quick look on the skill layout. This is what I've been running in the end of tier 1 and also now a couple of times in tier 2. It's really good for buffing the damage of your whole party, but still dealing quite a bit of damage. Okay, for the passives, there's not so much you need to know. There are just two things you really need to understand here in your passives. First of all, you have Resilient Mind. This gives you just always mana back if you block an attack. And if the attack deals more damage, you also get more mana back. So if you block all the Fury attacks in dungeons, you will always have enough mana for all your spells. And the second ability you need to understand is Cold Warrior. every time you shock or stun a target, you will heavily increase your heavy attack chance on this target. We can apply the stun or the shock effect on our target with Stunning Blow. So in the dungeon we of course can't stun a boss, but instead the boss will be shocked. That's why it's also really important that you always take Stunning Blow in dungeons, because it will heavily increase your damage. Okay, but now let's just have a look onto the rotation, and on the rotation I can always explain what the skills are doing. So the biggest strength of the Crusader is that it can heavily increase the damage of the whole party. That's why we always want to start first buffing our whole party. We use Devoted Sanctuary, which will give our whole party additional base damage. Then we use Rage's Fury to increase the skill damage boost of everyone. Then we use Da Vinci to increase the attack speed of everyone. And then we use Will Breaker on the boss to reduce its defense. If you have a tank who's doing that constantly in the fight, you will have so much faster dungeon runs. Because in the end, it's not about your damage, it's about you boosting the damage of everyone. I know it's not always that easy to buff your whole team in the fight, because people position themselves just really bad. But the value of these buffs is insane, and if you have good players in your party, they will stay always close to you, even if they are a bow player. Now, the order of all the other skills doesn't matter too much, but in the perfect world, you first apply the Provoking Roar effect, which will taunt the boss and you will deal additional damage to him. Then you go for Strategic Rush to apply first of all the Mastery effect and get additional 40 base damage. Then you use Stunning Blow to apply the shock to the boss. Then you go for Shield Throw, which will give you an additional heavy attack chance and again applies the Mastery effect. And from this point on, you spam all your damage abilities. So first you buff your teammates, and then you buff yourself, and then you spam all your damage abilities. Here you have also all the skill specialization I would take. You can change of course stuff in this build here. The most important thing that you should not change are just the buffs for your team and the debuffs for the boss. It's just way too good and the only reason why people play Crusader as a tank. Okay, but I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions or some other good ideas, please let me know in the comments. If you like the content and want to support me, don't forget to like, share and do all those good stuff. Thanks for watching and see ya in the next one.